A companion program to Winds of Change, A Matter of Choice, entitled Winds of Change, A Matter of Promise, is now available. For more information or to order the complete PBS Home Video American Indian Collection, call 1-800-776-8300.
The following presentation is from PBS Home Video.
I think when you're away from the reservation, you find out what you miss about this place, and you realize what you have here as far as especially growing up with the religion and the culture. You really begin to miss that.
Living on the reservation is only one part of building this whole structure to help Indian people. We had chosen to do it living in an urban area.
I knew I wanted to go to college, and I knew that I didn't want to marry young and have children and remain on the reservation. I just knew there was something else to do, and I wanted to do it.
I didn't realize that I have an identity until I went to college. When I through one of my anthropology courses, I've learned that I have a culture, and I'm a special kind, belong to a special group of people.
A matter of choice. America's native people can be citizens of both sovereign Indian nations and the United States. They may choose to live their lives in one or the other. Often they try to combine the best of both worlds. Usually there are trade-offs. This is about choices and about some of the people who've made them. Let's put aside for a moment the popular image of American Indians, the stuff of old movies, current headlines, or museums. America's indigenous people are as varied as the terrain they occupy. 50% of American Indians now live in cities. More than 50% have intermarried with other tribes or with non-Indians. Hello, I'm Hattie Kauffman, half Nez Perce Indian, half German, born on a reservation in Idaho and now living in New York City. You see, in cities, in intertribal enclaves, Indian culture can live, even thrive. And yet the growth, the very survival of hundreds of sovereign Indian nations that exist within the United States is threatened by the exodus of youth to cities. Now those Indian nations are working to accommodate change, offer new opportunities while maintaining tribal values. Each Indian nation is unique, but all have been subjected to the same invading force that has dislocated whole peoples and disrupted families. The Hopi Nation in Arizona is no exception, but a harsh and protective desert has provided some insulation and isolation. There is a sense of timelessness here, and the oldest continuously inhabited community in North America is among these villages. And here, as with most American Indians, extended family and identity are inextricably intertwined with spirituality. As in all Indian nations, the connection between homeland, worldview, and tribal identity is fundamental here. It's why people stay or choose to return. Like the rest of America, this nation has social problems: alcoholism, drug addiction, child abuse. and the villages have their own internal squabbles. But despite all of that, life here still revolves around ceremony, as it always has. Radford Kwanahangniwa says Hopi identity is rooted in ceremony.
The moment the child is born, that's the beginning of the religious activity, whether they know it or not.
This baby naming ceremony is as old as time, rarely photographed. It is a tender coming out for mother and baby after 21 days without sunlight, after 21 days of being cared for by the mother-in-law. It's a tie to the past for the child who will become the hope for the future. Babies born at Hopi are always of the mother's clan, but it's the paternal aunts who gather to name the child. With the coming of dawn, little Santi Hanyama is presented to the sun, the first of the rituals which will make him forever a Hopi.
The more you are involved with tradition and religion, you need to be on the reservation, because that's where the happening is. And we have ceremonies almost every month. And if they're not here to observe and participate, they're going to be getting away from it. They want to go on to improve themselves or get their degrees in some areas, get educational leave and go, and then you still can come back if you want to stay with the tribe.
Many do come back sooner or later. Pat Ross came back to her extended family, to her butterfly clan, to her sister Dorothy, to her nieces Kim, Joan, Carol, Susan, and many, many more nieces and nephews, to brothers and sisters, to aunts and uncles, godparents, dozens of clan relatives.
Words can't describe how happy I was to come home, to finally come home after being away for most of my life.
High on the mesa, home is a traditional house in the village that seems part of the cliffs below. It was this powerful sense of place, centered on the spiritual, that Pat was looking for. There was college, a career, and marriage to a member of the Sioux tribe. Pat says she never stopped missing her extended family and her place in it. She says her small grandchild will be raised in the Hopi way. But at first, her 3 children felt like strangers here.
I feel that when we first came back, that they were missing where they had come from. And they didn't really know anything about the culture or anything out here. I feel bad about the fact that I'm much older than any of my sisters, and yet I know the least because of my separation from my home for that many years.
I moved, when I came out here over 25 years ago and moved up to Second Mesa Village with my husband, I felt like I was moving to a foreign country because no one spoke English, and I didn't understand a word of Hopi. I realized there was something unique about being Hopi, and there's something no one else could be. Fortunately, my children have been able to experience this.
The Hopi ceremonial cycle is festooned with colorful sights and sounds and airy anticipation. but festivity is grounded in responsibility, a word heard often here. A boy invited to the butterfly ceremony is obliged to carve an elaborate headdress for his partner. It is one of a multitude of predetermined responsibilities that guide ceremonial life. Roles and responsibilities are clearly defined in this matrilineal society. A married woman's brother, the maternal uncle, is the male head of family. Carmelita Purley is a very contemporary woman, for whom the uncle's very traditional role works well.
The uncle is very, very important. The uncle is, I guess, second in command. Here's the female. Top, the uncle is right below it. Then everybody branch off. The father more or less steps aside because he's got a responsibility over at his sister's home. He's only a visitor at my home. He's only a visitor.
And if should there ever be a separation, the man leaves, and according to Hopi tradition, all a man owns are his ceremonial clothes. The clothes you see the men wearing, that's all they own. Everything else belongs to the woman. The children, because it's a maternal society, belong to the woman. They take her clan.
My husband and I, we had a lot of fights over that because he was from a society where the male were the ones. It made our marriage very, very difficult because of that one thing. And we never resolved it. He's living his own way, and I'm here with the children.
The social structure here gives members an exquisite sense of their place in the world. But the close-knit relationships can effectively shut out a newcomer looking to join the society. Pat's son, of course, belongs to her clan, but he is part Sioux and arrived with outside ways. Ridiculed by other children, he ran away.
It was at such a young age that it literally scared me, and I wanted to pack up everything, run back to where I was, where I felt comfortable, where he wasn't discriminated against. It hurt. And I found that, people do discriminate just because you're a different tribe.
Pat's niece, Dorothy's daughter, Kim Sakakaku, was brought up in the Hopi Nation. She traveled abroad with her family, lived away briefly, then chose to settle here with her Navajo husband and daughter Christy. But like Pat, she felt the pain of discrimination when Christy was barred from participation in the Hopi way.
Everything about Hopi life involves both the mother and the father. Because her father wasn't the Hopi, that part of her could not participate. We eventually got a divorce, but there were other problems that came up with that because of the intermarriage. We could never be that whole family.
With her new marriage to a Hopi, Kim observed the baby naming ceremony at the birth of her second child, Lance. The old ways no longer conflict with her modern role as a working woman.
It took a lot of years to get here, and two ways that it took to be able to balance life within the traditional world and the modern world is, for one thing, my father was a private business owner. My father also was involved with the tradition and the religion.
It's been raining real hard lately.
Kim's father, Farrell Sakakaku.
When I first came back from school, I was not trusted by my own people. And of course, when I was younger, and I had my own thoughts and I had my own ways, and I thought maybe I could change the whole society, but they changed me instead. things that you learn from academics is not really applied here. You have to blend them in slowly. That total society relies on a tradition such as corn planting, traditions, wedding, dancing, and things like that. So the whole life centers around the tradition here first, then the business. But we cannot move that fast. We have to work with our people in the village.
Here, as elsewhere, change has been ongoing. The population grows steadily and grows younger, and slowly traditions shift.
That change where they used to be able to sit down with their grandmother and the old folks that are now gone and just visit with them without the television and all these things that you see now.
The new ways come to bear on family life. New jobs for men who find work outside the cornfields that still nourish them, body and spirit. New roles for women, traditional householders who more often now move into the job market and into politics. New houses, separate and unlike the Mesa Village homes that cling side by side to the rocky cliffs. People move from the intimacy of Mesa life to the cinder block housing of HUD. As food and other supplies are more available, dependence on cooperative labor diminishes.
In a traditional way of living, we have clusters of home within the village, and all the family are within this same household. And so the teaching is going constantly. Now that we are increasing population-wise, and that we also are learning the outside ways of living, and one of them is having your own household somewhere else with your own family. That's where the breakage is. That's where uncles are not talking to the youngsters.
When I go to the village, it's entirely different. But within the past 2 years now that we've had water, it used to be that we didn't have any water, running water up there. Electricity has just come about within the past 15, 20 years. To be with my family there, as you know, everybody coming in as Hopis, I feel more comfortable.
I want a traditional house. It's going to be made out of rock and with a nice view and a good working space. And I want to put a outdoor oven out here for my bread, and I want to put a pit for the corn, so that way.
Janice Day chooses to live here with her Bear Strap clan and her small shop. After life in the city, there was that moment when she knew she had to be here.
On the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And I said, well, if I knew, the book Stranger in a Strange Land, that's where I was at right there. And I thought, if something happened, where would I be? Nobody would care. I mean, I'd be in a land full of strangers, and I wouldn't have anything, I wanted to go back home.
Those who stay here tend the old ways carefully, as Janice Day's uncle did.
He's the one that keeps our family intact, but the other uncles are off in the city, and they've forgotten about what life was like out here. And so when they get old and their family leaves them and they get a divorce, and they want to come back home. And it's hard for them to do when they've been away so long, and they come back.
But Janice Day doesn't deny that things here at Hopi have changed as well.
But nowadays you got too many choices. You can go down to the store and buy your meat for supper, and you don't have to worry about it. And I think that's what's driving people apart, is because now they can go out and get a job and feel that they're contributing by buying groceries, where a long time ago it was contributing by helping raise things to eat. See, where the fields were a long time ago, way out there, and they'd have to start early in the morning and take off running out to their field, and then they'd work with it and come back in the evening. So, and then nowadays, it's not that way. Now they want somebody to give them a ride down to the field.
Now with the way things are changing with the modern world, you find that the father is in one way becoming more involved with the family. But then again, there's that problem with the alcoholism problem where again you don't find the father there in the home.
The more things change, the more they stay the same may apply here. As change comes about, there is a new awareness of fundamental loss. The elders, who affirm the inevitability of progress, are declining in numbers drastically. Who will replace them? Who will pass on traditional values and tribal wisdom to the young, both urban and reservation? Adults may want their children to bond with the old ways, but they also want them to learn and grow in new ways. The Hopi look to the new high school to break the off-reservation boarding school tradition for teenage youth, and to strengthen and prolong the tie to tribe and nation.
That was one of the main reasons why they wanted the high school, was so that the students could stay at home and learn the values that are taught here and participate in the ceremonies. That was one of the main reasons for bringing out, and then hopefully kind of put an end to the intermarriage.
It was a totally new experience for all of my children to have friends that are now all Indian.
He's at Phoenix. I heard he's going to school at Phoenix.
It was a totally new experience for parents, too, who hadn't had to cope with teenage problems firsthand.
Children left here after they finished 8th grade if they wanted to go on. The rearing of children at that point in time was done by the BIA boarding school personnel. And now that the children are back, it's presenting some problems for families, and it's presenting problems for me because I feel that families and parents don't know how to discipline their kids. They don't know that role that they have lost for so many years. The reservation doesn't have a summer program like where we came from. You had YWCA and you had all these youth organizations where your child got involved at an early age, and my kids were in soccer and all baseball and all these other things where they had Saturday leagues.
Though somewhat late, Pat chose this life for her children, hoping to capture the particular circular wisdom of Hopi, which runs counter to Anglo-linear concepts. Head football coach Charles Otterman says a Hopi athlete with a killer instinct is a contradiction in terms.
Football's brand new to them. I mean, you say sweep and they're like, what? And you say pass. And, you know, the terminology's even, they're not even vaguely familiar with that.
Just run I formation. I want 23 isolation, but we're not going to have the 4 back.
One of the things that's interesting from a coaching standpoint that we coaches have to deal with is the balance between Hopi cultural values and what we're trying to bring up here as an Anglo football program. Hopi religion is something that goes 24 hours a day, and it never stops. So their dances are in the week or on the weekends, and they can go from 24-hour periods. So we lose a lot of kids periodically because of that. We're accustomed as coaches to working with children or students that will respond, will fire out, will hit people, will work hard and be real aggressive. And we find out a lot of times with the Hopi kids that they're more used to the traditional values of working together, and the community comes first, and everybody just pitching in and helping each other.
Classroom, I want everybody at school every day. You guys better go hard!
We find out that there's an acceptable margin of winning and losing, 5 to 6 points. You're 6 points ahead, you're okay. You're 6 points behind, you're okay. And that killer instinct to say, we're at halftime and we're up 13-0, yes, motivate. When the game ends, we want it to be 27-0. You get more of it's acceptable. We're okay. We're at 13-0, and that's okay. We've done our job, and everything's okay. But we got to keep pushing them.
Competition, new to a nation where cooperation is the way of life. Anglo values insinuate themselves in subtle ways.
Airplane right. Come on, guys. Bring it in. Bring it in. Everybody listen up. Okay, guys, just change our thinking for a few minutes. Monday we start classes. We know that the no pass, no play has gone into effect. Okay, guys, we got to start working hard in the classroom. Did you hear me on that?
Yes. It's a critical moment for all Indian nations, when the best and the brightest leave for another nation, nearby, yet a world apart.
It's lonely now when you get older, you know, if you don't have young people that come back to take care of you, well, you know, you don't have nobody to take care of you, you get lonesome. And that's what kills a lot of people too, loneliness.
That doesn't bother me, but it bothers my children because they're afraid that when I get real old and they know they're leaving home now, they're afraid that I'm going to be left alone with no one else. And I just tell them, well, I'm home and you know that everything's extended families, and I don't think I'm going to really be alone like you really fear that I'm going to be. And I'm an independent woman. I just don't want to get married again. I choose to be a single mother.
Even as the winds of change blow through the nations of the world, this small sovereign nation ponders its future, looking at social and economic problems, beginning to reverse the trend that deprives it of many talented and skilled people.
Counting back about 10 years, there's hardly anybody coming back. But now, presently, within the year or two, I've seen a lot of kids that graduated from college are coming back here as teachers. They're providing education to our children. But I have not seen any entrepreneur like myself come back to really try to develop the land. See, that's the emphasis I try to give to my people, is that you come back and you do it. We do it ourselves. We are not ever going to depend on the government any longer, because they're going to phase out sooner or later. They tell us that a long time ago.
A nation needs its young, and the Hopi tribe looks to economic development, such as tourism, to provide jobs to attract the young. Native arts and crafts have grown dramatically in value and popularity, and more often now, buyers go directly to the native people to buy. Some ceremonies here permit visitors, and the number of tourists grows steadily.
There'll be some buildings for tourism, maybe, and maybe some more shops for the crafts, and maybe other services like shoe store, Kentucky Fried Chicken, this type of a thing I see.
Land issue is most important with each village. There are clan holdings, there are religious holdings to the land that are used during certain activities, and those areas need to be protected and need to be as natural as possible to do some of our religious activities. We cannot develop industries and projects in just any area.
I emphasize the education, go to college, get a formal education, and then you will come back and you develop the land.
I hope to come back and do some stuff out here. I was talking to a friend of mine, we were just kind of joking around, saying we could build an amphitheater across the Civic Center, turn that into a concert hall or something like that. But I think, especially with my dad also, he's been encouraging me with these religious aspects of things also. He's been teaching me just different names of things, how you do things, the process that goes on.
I guess what Hopi has always told you is that you should marry another Hopi.
Yeah.
And so how are you going to control all these girls that are out there?
I think in the back of my mind, I always keep that ideal with me about marrying a Hopi. But I don't know, I'll probably meet some people.
When there is something going on, he knows, because I talked to him about different cycles and different ceremonies and when something is happening, and he has already participated in some, and I said, you need to continue that.
But keep that in the back of my mind too also.
I live here with my grandmother. I'll be the first one in the family to be going off to college. To me, that means having to make a major adjustment on which view you want to view the most, which is important in your opinions, which path you want to follow, in other words.
I'm under psychology right now, but I'm thinking of changing to computer science. I'm not sure. Undecided.
I feel that the more exposure they get, the more they experience outside, the more they're going to know what they've got here. But if you haven't gone out there, you can't experience it. You never know it. You just take it for granted that what you've got is here, and it's going to always be here.
I can only be away so long, and I'll miss it, and I'll come home, and I'll kind of get tired of it, so I'll go. It's just like back and forth. I don't think, I know I'd come back, but I don't know for how long, probably just periods of time.
Back and forth. It's one pattern for those who have the money or the time and who aren't too far away.
I don't know, it's her child. She has to make the decision, but of course, whatever she decides, we'll live with that for a while. But I'm sure she'll be back. Until she finishes her education, then we don't know what's going to happen then. But by then she'll be big enough that she may want to go with her mom too. I don't know.
Well, she's my baby. Bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah, it's all right. They'll be back. They'll be back. This is my whole life now. This is my whole life now. Right? Oh, sweetheart. Oh, you're such a doll.
Partings are nothing new, of course. Once forced, now voluntary, they remain bittersweet. The early protective bonding with the Hopi way will bring some home for good. Many will return briefly to the mesa top for ceremonies. Many, if not most, will find a permanent place in the larger nation that's filled with promise of another kind. Turning points. The move to boarding school, to college, or to city jobs. Making the choice for yourself usually means making the choice for your children. My parents moved 7 children when they left the reservation. I was just 4 years old. Now, there are those in the city who shed their past, like so many early immigrants to the United States. But for most, Indian identity persists. Indeed, identity can even grow stronger in the face of discrimination. Now, in the city, where the ideal and the isolation of the nuclear family prevail, Native people reach out to other tribes, instinctively seeking an extended family, and new intertribal traditions and institutions are born.
Indian summer. Well, what a perfect idea, because he gets all the tribes from all over the country come down to this powwow. All the different tribes that are down there, they all get along like family.
The city powwow, clans, bands, and tribes come together, and Native concerns transcend tribal differences.
This is Ignaces. Hi. This is Georgianne. I know you, but I don't know your name. I'm so proud.
I'm Ignaces from the nominee. I'm the chairman of the Miss Indian Summer Pageant. Our judges this year, Diane Porter. She is our president of Miss Indian Summer.
The winner will be announced tonight at 7 o'clock at the powwow grounds.
Hey, you know those little things you're supposed to make? If you still have them and can make them, we'd like to put them in the training post at the Indian School.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Looks like a nice crowd tonight. I'm Ignaces. I'm the new interim director of this school.
Far from reservation nations, Indian identity persists, and large numbers of urban Indian people pass on Native values as best they can in a rushed and often hostile mainstream society.
Okay, go ahead. Minuwa, Bongi, Anishinaabe, we are.
We are proud to be Indian and speak a little of our language. Miigwech.
In urban settings, there's a wide spectrum of economic and social lifestyles. Here in an affluent suburb of Milwaukee, public relations person Georgiana Ignace, physician Gerald Ignace, and their children lead a sophisticated, mainstream, upper-class life with a difference.
Looked like you were having fun.
One Indian may say you're not Indian enough because you don't do the powwow scene. Or if you really live in a suburb and not in the city, well, definitely you're not Indian enough.
Granted, you do lose a lot of your Indian traditions and cultural values. Hopefully, we try to maintain that as best we can. There have to be some trade-offs.
I grew up on a reservation. I was one of 12 children. My family was very poor, and I knew that I didn't want to marry young and have children and remain on the reservation. I just knew there was something else to do, and I wanted to do it.
Georgiana Ignace knew what she wanted. Her choice to leave the Menominee Reservation for college dovetailed with that of Gerald Ignace, a Coeur d'Alene from Idaho.
One of the reasons why I went away to school was the fact that my parents, and I have to give them a big deal of credit with this, felt that the only way that I was going to get ahead or do anything was by education, and this is why all these sacrifices were made for me to do that.
But we instill in our kids that they are Indian, and family comes first, and you're Indian second.
How do you want this?
Duck dive here.
No matter where they go, they're an example. Just show society what Indians could do. What time will you be home then?
Before practice starts.
Oh,
Half hour before.
what time are you coming back?
Right after, I promise.
Us folks at home,
The old folks.
baby. We hope they marry Indian. What are we going to do when you're 17? You could leave. There are a lot of Indians to choose from.
I'll buy my car.
Oh, buy your car. A lot of Indians are getting more and more education. So I don't think there's an excuse not to marry Indian.
Realistically, in mainstream city life, the odds are that Lyle Ignace will marry a non-Indian.
Other people's eyes, it would make a difference. It's possibly more traditional people, Indians. If they saw I was to marry a non-Indian, they might look down upon that, or down upon me. I was brought up in a urban area where predominantly a white society, and most of my life I've seen nothing but white females.
All we could do is help, maybe perhaps expose them to others, because they're not exposed here in the suburbs to Indians that are very talented, very brilliant, and have the same goals that they may have.
However, conduct. We take into account those many experiences. We take into account all of the loved ones that we have within our families, within our clans, within our bands and our tribes.
We can use our traditional ways and our traditional ideas and our traditional healing and mix it with Western medicine, with Western living and Western life.
I think the one thing we can really take home too is that it's a current thing, that the children are there now and they need our help now. Without the Indian youth, there will be no Indians in the future.
I think I only express the practical side, but there's something about the drum that's just, that draws you back. And I felt that as a kid too, growing up. that, I think, is part of the thing that you don't lose and you don't forget. I think one of the things that you tend to see on Indian reservations is the fact that there has been some breakdown in families and the social nature of the community to the point where children don't tend to get all the support that they need. Alcoholism becomes a problem, suicides, homicides, drugs, they all become a problem.
This takes a while.
The city, too, has social problems, but for those who emigrate from Indian nations to find empty promises, there is sanctuary and family, sometimes in unexpected places.
If you both stand there and wait, you can only wait for one thing, and that's for the guy to punch. You don't want the guy to punch. You want to be the guy.
Del Porter finds his extended family in the gym. Brought up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, he calls himself a city Indian.
Don't move that foot. On the third jab, you hold it. Your feet stay there. And then the right hand comes. This area right here is a real bad gang area. There's two gangs here that are the Latin Kings and the Cobras. They're both pretty well known. There's shootings and a lot of drug dealing.
We'll see what you got there, Junior.
Saw him hiding in the shadows in the gangway.
Who knows where these kids would be? More jabs now, more jabs.
Del, a Chippewa whose father chose the city for him, has come late to what he calls Indian ways. The gym has become central to his feeling of Indianness and his need for extended family, which includes Indians and non-Indians alike.
Indian people are really close family. All of them, well, even a lot of these kids aren't Indian, but we're almost like one big family up here, you know. We go to each other with problems, or they talk, or they get up there and beat each other up. Two of the boys in there, their father was involved with dope. That's the way, nice left hand. And the two boys, the mother's gone. I think she's in California someplace. The grandma's raising them. And if not for the gym, they might be out on that dope road. Keep working. That's it. Keep working. Keep working. And your first jab, just to get your distance. Reach up and you touch the club. Then you know you got a half a step, you can reach them. They've been up here every night. They never miss a night. Minute and a half. And that oldest one is one that says, if I get real good, though, maybe my dad will wake up and notice me, you know. Here's a kid, when he was on a reservation, he must have won himself 5 or 6 Golden Glove titles, amateur boxing titles, and he came off the reservation, the way I understand it, is for an education. There's not much doubt in my mind this guy could have been one of the top professional 10 top men in the world. He was that good. And the drugs just got him down. Now he's back on the reservation. Probably coming to the city, you know, to hear all about the jobs and the work, and they come here and they find there aren't that many jobs. It ain't that easy to find a job. So you got nothing to do. You look for maybe a week or two trying to find a job. You can't find one. You get discouraged. You hit that tavern and sitting there and listen to everybody else that can't find a job. So you all drawing your troubles together. That's the way I could see it.
Taverns are also home to urban pastimes like bowling and pool, and provide a place for the city's intertribal family to come together.
Give me my dollar.
You don't go to the Menominee Reservation and find Chippewas and Oneidas and Cherokees. You find Menominee Indians. All the reservations, they stay with their own tribes. In the city, they're all different.
My name is Richard Schofield. I'm a full-blooded Chippewa from Upper Michigan. We have a Menominee, 3 Chippewas, an Oneida, a Stockbridge, and an Apache. It's a great bunch of people. they're working people. And what recreation they do, they come out one night shooting pool, they want to shoot on a good team. And this was a team to shoot on.
Living in the city and liking it. Still, Del Porter talks wistfully of the things he's missed.
God bless my father. I get disturbed and I get mad because he didn't raise us in a lot of Indian ways. When I contacted my mother, I asked her, how come Dad never took us to powwows? Or I didn't really know anything about the traditional dresses and the dances and all. And she says, listen, we didn't want you to have all the problems of, which when I think back about it, we did have it. Oh, there's the Indian over there. I remember I got in a lot of fights. My daughter, in school, she reads a lot, so she was reading back about Indian life back then. And so she more or less inspired the whole family to get involved in Indian ways again.
Del's daughter, Deanna, city-bred, college student, and committed to this extended family.
My grandfather is where I get my Indian blood from. When he passed away, no one else cared. You know, no one else in the family kept up. I mean, they cared, but they didn't have the time. You have to keep at things, and for a lot of people, it's different from them coming off the reservation and moving into a city. A lot of young people aren't interested anymore. They look back at their parents and their elders and where'd it get them? They're on reservations getting their rights taken away. And there's a lot of reservations where the land's being taken away. And so I think a lot of young kids are looking back and saying it doesn't do any good. And they just give up on it. And so a lot of the Indian people that move to the cities, that's drawing them further away from where their people are, and they're out on their own here. And in the city, more or less, you feel like you have to abandon your traditional ways. You really don't.
In the city, intertribal celebrations and ceremonies function as extended families. On the reservation, they are part of a total experience. Deanna Porter discovered this on the White Earth Reservation of her ancestors.
I'm there for that maybe week or 2 weeks, and it just, everything comes together there for me. It's kind of hard to explain unless you really experience it. I think I'll end up staying, living primarily in Milwaukee, but I think I'll be going back a lot, back and forth.
In different ways, Deanna Porter and Lyle Ignace relate to their Indian identity short of moving back to the reservation.
Hearing stories about living on the reservation does not really seem appealing. My parents have come off the reservation, so they know what it'd be like if I was on the reservation and have to struggle through school, college, and graduate to, finally succeed. I think my dad wanted to cross that out for me. He didn't want that part of struggle in life, and I think it was a good choice.
It's known as the good life, but as they say, you can't have it all. Few choices are made without some regrets.
Good evening. Welcome. How are you this evening?
People lose something, even though you may have come to be very fortunate. Sure, we have a home in the suburbs, but that doesn't mean we've made it friendship-wise.
The old stereotypes die hard, but among the well-to-do, they may be more difficult to track.
It's more subtle, and it's more competitive, and it's keen, and it hurts. People are so sophisticated on a higher level that sometimes you don't know they're doing it to you. But the more experience you get, you know. By going to powwows or working with Indian organizations or doing volunteer work for Indians, that's what keeps you connected with your Indian identity. Indians are not just in the ethnic parade for one day or a few hours. They are different, and they don't want to assimilate. They don't want to be just like everyone else, the melting pot of America.
Well, I think tradition never remains stagnant. I think things always change. And what may have been traditional 100 years ago is certainly not done in the same way now.
The Default, academic achievement, drumming, Ojibwe language, and reading. Kateri Flores, drumming most improved and penmanship most improved.
The ethnic parade, the community school, the powwow all speak to the need for continuity with the past, alert to outside attempts to assimilate them, bound in a unique relationship to a larger nation. American Indians in the city recreate something of the singular spirit of the reservation. Conversely, Native people on the reservation want to select what they need from mainstream society, the skills and the skilled to develop their own resources.
If you didn't do it, you might want to call the chairman to do another interview or an interview. You have the chance, so I let him know about that today.
Indian nations have survived for centuries against all odds, contrary to outside expectations, and they are expert indeed in adapting to change.
The elders that went to Washington, this is what they had brought back, is that we as Hopi people need to know the language. We need to know good things of the dominant society. But on the other hand, that the religion, the tradition, and the language should also be preserved.
And if there was just some way where you could still have your career and your job and your education for your kids and all these other things and yet be close enough, it would have been beautiful, but it didn't work out that way.
It is indeed a universal dilemma, how to arrive at a delicate balance between economic security, prosperity, and still preserve the protective, nurturing interaction and cooperation that makes life more precious.
Now that we are going into modernization on the reservation, my feeling is that that would be one way of helping the Hopi people, is to teach the Hopi youth, the children, some of the necessities that we would get from the white people. So they would have knowledge of good things from the white people and also knowledge from our own traditional things.
But the uneasy partner in the design for the future is the influx of Anglo ideas, values, and the view from a competitive world. That has initiated what's been called a small renaissance on reservations, the enhanced interest in preserving native language and customs.
My father tells me I should always have the farm going because corn represents life. Whatever amount of corn that you raise and produce and gather for your home, it means that my children and my business will grow. It will never die. It all goes back to the religion and spirituality part of the Hopi way of life. So that's the reason why I always plant corn.
It's coming back. Everyone's waking up and saying, oh, intermarriage. Maybe half the population is intermarried. No one's speaking Hopi anymore. What's that doing to Hopi? What's it going to do to religion? We're slowly seeing ceremonies die out.
You can see where people are beginning to realize and wake up and say, hey, we've got to do something about bringing these things back.
And that's why I say to these people out here, they should all go back east and just even see the city and then come back and see what's here and what they should appreciate.
Indian nations aim to be more than places to grow old in or to be buried in. The task is to bring home the talented young with their newly acquired skills. The challenge is to acknowledge the demands of the future. The fear is the spiritual ceremonies left untended will mean a loss of access to the next world. Extended families, like nuclear families, continue to change and are redefined. But on reservation or off, family remains the center of Indian life, a tie to an indelible past, and like Indian nations, a tie that cannot easily be undone.
When I go to Phoenix, everyone's in such a hurry to go here and there and everywhere else. And I think, is this how I was? I don't miss it at all. I really do not miss it.
I don't think there's any guilt in leaving the reservation. I think they still like me. I ran for some political offices on the reservation and did not get completely turned away. But guilt by leaving, no.
Family is your sisters, your aunts, your clan members who may not be related to you closely, but they are a tie, and they will always be a tie.
My home, all I knew and grew up with, is on a reservation. I will be buried on a reservation. I would not be buried in the city because it's not my home.
Hopi are a hospitable but private people. In the villages and at all ceremonial dances, secular and sacred, cameras are strictly forbidden. We appreciate the rare opportunity and permission to photograph in the Hopi Nation, especially in the Hunyama baby naming ceremony and the Jackson family feast, given in honor of their mother and the uncles who have passed on.